They said, we need to pray. And I thought, that's a good suggestion. When a leader of a country decides we need to pray, it means that the need for external interference is in demand. A brief look at the quality of leaders around the world and an assessment of their ability to solve the world's complicated problems is questionable. I listened to the greatest leader in the world, the most powerful man in the world, and I listened very carefully for the last 6 weeks. Almost every statement he has made I have listened to, because I wanted to see and to hear, what does a leader do in crisis? And I heard a voice coming from this great leader, President George Bush, as he tries to comfort the people, and then he tries to give answers. And there's a struggle between the two. Many leaders are bankrupt of new ideas, and others revert to tribalism, while others return to oppressive nature of dictatorships. Our ideologies have failed us. Communism and its promise of equality and its promise of commonality has failed. Capitalism has created more poverty than it solved. Socialism has evaporated into wishful thinking now. And our last hope was in the freedoms of democracy, and that has been shaken by the emergence of global terrorism. What do you do when your best government system is shaken? What do you do when the very thing that that system wants to create, called freedom, is no longer safe? What do you do? What kind of leader do we need now? I want to make a few comments about our present leadership in the world. The game of politics has been overshadowed by the need to perform now. Campaign lies and promises cannot be sold to the unemployed anymore. They want bread and house. Slick programs of political manipulation cannot muffle the loud cries of the stomachs of people. We need leaders that produce now. Economic plans cannot be postponed to long-term benefits now in the face of drastic emergency needs. Leadership today cannot look to human wisdom nor human intellect to confidently face the challenges of our day. You hear me tonight? We need leadership. We need leadership that can tap into another world and in some other wisdom and some other solutions that we can't invent on earth. For the first time in my life as an intelligent human, I have come to the conclusion that I am very glad I believe in Jesus. That is not a religious cliche. I mean, I am so scared about life. I am so happy that I know who it is. My confidence is in Jesus. This year's summit has a theme: the power of servant leadership. And this is to direct our focus on a philosophy of leadership that is not from this world. Everything rises and falls on leadership. So go the leaders, so go the nations. So go the leaders, so go the family. So go the leaders, so go our communities. But the question is, what is leadership? A friend of mine, Bill Maxwell, who wrote the foreword to one of my books, he and I were talking the other day at a conference, and I was telling him I appreciate his books. But I mentioned to him I had a problem with one of his definitions. He writes in his books on leadership that leadership is influence. I agree and disagree. I agree that leadership is influence, but I disagree that that's all it is. Because if I was to take a .38 revolver, put to your head, and ask you to kiss my foot, I think you would kiss my foot. I would have influenced you to do it with that .38 revolver. But that's not leadership. That's manipulation. Leadership is defined as influence. However, this definition is not true leadership. If leadership is simply influence, then all the recent events of terrorist attacks were a result of leadership. Because whoever flew the planes into the World Trade Center, and the Pentagon were under the influence of somebody. Bin Laden, a name you've all come to know now as a household name, on his Al-Qaeda network, is also fulfilling the role of leadership, if leadership is just influence. Because this individual is influencing millions of people, but rather not to give life, but to destroy. If this is leadership, then the future of our world is a bleak prospect. If Bin Laden is a leader, we got some problems. If this is not leadership, then what is leadership? I suggest that leadership is not manipulation, nor is it controlling people. Leadership is something more honorable and higher. True leadership is of a higher order, and this kind of leadership our world needs right now. I will give a definition that you may prefer to note. In my office, I have a file with over 300 definitions of leadership that I have accumulated over the years. I have read literally a couple hundred books on leadership alone in my library. And I have assimilated all of these definitions, trying to find one that works. And after reading the ultimate book, I've come to a conclusion that leadership is simply this. Leadership is the capacity to influence others through inspiration, motivated by a passion, generated by a purpose. In other words, leadership has more to do with inspiring people because of your passion than it has to do with controlling people because of your manipulation. The plight of the world as a result of leadership irresponsibility began years ago in the Garden of Eden. As a matter of fact, the fall of man, you may not be aware, was a result of leadership failure. And therefore, the fall of the human race from the high standard of dominion over the earth was caused by leadership mismanagement. Adam mismanaged his responsibility. In Genesis 1:26, we were given through Adam the leadership over the planet Earth by the Creator. In fact, the purpose for the creation of mankind was leadership. God created man to have dominion and to have management over the planet, to rule the earth on his behalf. Therefore, the original purpose and ultimate goal of mankind was, still is, leadership. Therefore, if the fall of man was a leadership failure, then the salvation of mankind is the restoration of true leadership. It was the ultimate leader, Jesus Christ, who stated and summarized the problem of humanity. I will quote what his summary of human plight was. It's found in Matthew chapter 9. It may be helpful to read it for yourself, but in Matthew 9 verse 36, Christ looked at humanity and he concluded this. He said, "They are harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd." He didn't say like sheep without a committee. He said man's problem was he was lacking a shepherd. The word shepherd, for you biblical scholars, you know it simply means, of course, leader, the one who is in charge. So according to Christ, he looked at humanity and he said, they are like sheep. And I want to stress that man is not sheep. And we should not rejoice in this simile that Christ uses to describe us, because it is a very horrible simile. Because sheep literally means dumb and will follow anything. So he was saying that we are like sheep. We are lost. Humanity is groping. He's trying to find direction. He's looking for some sense of purpose. He's like a sheep. And if you study sheep, you know that sheep are so dumb that while they're eating, they don't look up much. And they fall over cliffs and die. And that's why a shepherd has a staff to catch the sheep that falls over the cliff. Jesus said, we are like sheep looking for shepherd. His solution was they need a shepherd. They need a leader. He also showed us the power of leadership in a statement that he made in Luke chapter 6. I'd like for you to turn there with me if you will. Luke chapter 6, verse 39. This verse has stirred my heart and changed my life. It has made me very careful about leadership. Jesus said in verse 39 of Luke 6, And he told them this parable, quote, "Can a blind man lead a blind man? Will they not both fall into the pit? And a student is not above his teacher, but everyone who is fully trained will be just like his teacher." End quote. I don't think we even ponder this statement enough. But he says, number one, if the blind leads the blind, they both fall into the pit, which means that the fact that he used the word lead means that the blind can lead. In other words, not everybody with a title know where they're going. Not everybody with a position know what they're doing. He said if the blind lead the blind, they both have the same destination. So the question is not how are you following? The question is, can your leader see? We're not just interested in this generation in leaders anymore. We are more interested in leaders that have vision, that can see, and that can communicate what they see to the followers. Because you see, the followers may not want to go where they see. And that is why Jesus said, a student is not above his teacher, nor a child above his master. But when he is fully trained, he will be just like his teacher. The implication is, you can only lead people as far as you've gone yourself, and you can only take them to where you are. Therefore, this brings me to my point tonight that I want to make. That is, if you can only lead people as far as you go, then if you cannot go beyond the problems we have now, if you cannot tap into a power beyond the powers we have now, then I don't want to follow you. This is important, because today we need a Moses again. What kind of leader was Moses? He was able to tap into a power beyond Egypt. He was able to look at the soldiers of Egypt coming, and look at water that blocked his path, and looked at soldiers and spears and daggers, and looked at water that blocked his path, and looked at horses that came to kill, and looked at water that blocked his path. And he didn't throw his hands up and say, well, I guess that's it. This leader was able to tap in beyond the water, beyond the Egyptian, and tap into a power that the average leader know not of. This leader was so confident in that power beyond the powers that he made a declaration before he did the act.